Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 1 p.m. We are in the presence of our clerks, and we do have quorum in that all of our council members are here today. Item 2, land acknowledgement statement. The Township of Hamilton is situated within the traditional territory of the Mississauga, Anishinaabe, and Chippewa nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations. Our work on these lands respectfully acknowledges their resilience and their long-lasting contributions to the area now known as the Township of Hamilton. Item 3 on our agenda is additions. Is there any? Seeing none, that shall be recorded. Item 4, confirmation of the agenda. Could I have a mover, please, that the agenda for regular council meeting on October 17th, 2023 be approved? Moved by John, seconded by Mark. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Item 5, pecuniary interest. Is there any declarations today? Seeing none, that shall be recorded. I don't believe we have anyone here for public question period, as I don't know of anyone online. So we'll move forward to our presentations. And item 7.1 on our agenda is Joint Animal Control Municipal Animal Service Board. Final financial report. Richard, good afternoon and welcome. The floor is yours.
Good afternoon, Mayor Jib and members of council. It's a pleasure to be here to highlight the final results for the Joint Animal Control. I have a couple documents to go through. Would it be possible to pull up the draft financial statements first quickly? Yeah, so we as auditors have audited the results of the Joint Animal Control Board, and both in conjunction with PSAB and in conjunction with the agreement that was signed with the Humane Society. And then just a quick look at the draft financial statements. Power to move that ahead, yes. So next week, just a quick look at the auditor's report. And as similar, just has the basic qualification for donations and fundraising. But other than that, it is a clean audit opinion. And I guess I just want to highlight both the second last paragraph there on page 1 is the material uncertainty related to going concern. Just the fact that since the board is winding up, it just makes users aware that financial statements are normally prepared on a going concern basis, that you will continue on, discharge all your liabilities and continue to operate. So that's just something unique there, since the board is winding up. But as I said, it is a clean audit opinion, similar to what the board has had in the past. And then when we take a look at the statement of, is this working? Okay, statement. Okay, all right, thanks. Statement of financial position. What it does show then that the audit was done to the end of August 31, 2022. And you can see there that looking at the statement of financial position, what's left is just a receivable from the municipality for both the remaining reserves that are there as well. That's offset by the amount owing to the to wind up the organization for about 97,000, and the amount owing to the Humane Society based on the agreement of about 50% of the reserve. And then what's left over is your accumulated surplus, and we'll take a look at that quickly as we move forward. And then when we move to the following slide, you will see just the statement of operations where things ended off for that time period for the 8 months. The majority of the operations here did wind up at the end of April 29th based on the agreement. But when you take a look at both the revenues and the expenses, you can see there the surplus deficit for the period was quite large, being the 516,940, but that does include the transfer to the Humane Society that was in the agreement. So I just wanted to touch on the financial statements because the slides in the other presentation, they are based on that 516,940. So that's, if you're wondering where that number comes from, then that's where it is. And perhaps if you weren't wondering where it comes from, then I'm sorry to take up your time. But then next we come just to the notes of the financial statement. And the one note there I just wish to highlight there is, two notes would be note number 3, which talks about the accumulated surplus. So keep going down. It's on page 7 of the document. Just at the top of that page there. So you can see there that there was no operating surplus at the end of the period. You disposed of all your tangible capital assets, so there's no net book value. And then there's just some monies remaining there at the end of August for both related to the building sale that was subsequently transferred to the participating municipalities, and then the 283 in the general reserve is what we've been taking a look at. And then as well, note 7 just talks about the sale of assets and the transfer of service. So that's a summary of where the audited results come into the end of August. I'm not sure if there was any questions on that. Of course, then that, as I said, provides the basis for the following calculations on the next part of the other presentation. So then what we had done in the next presentation here is calculate the amount owing to the Humane Society, and then there that is presented here on this slide. So really what it does is takes the prior year reserve, takes the current year operational deficit, which we saw back on page 2 of the draft financial statements, and then it gets adjusted for both the opening surplus that was there and then the contribution, and then taking away the impacts of tangible capital assets to get you down to an operational surplus, or overall it ended up being a deficit, and then as well taking into effect the financial statements did include some wind-up costs for terminations that were in excess of the agreement, as well as a cost coming in after the end of April. So really, when you calculate the reserve based on the agreement to April 29th, it was the 712,498, half of which then was paid over to the Humane Society. And then when you go to the next slide, then it just calculates then the remainder that is left to go back to the 3 participating municipalities, and that calculation is presented there, starting off with the prior year reserve, adding in the prior year surplus, taking off the loss and in-year loss, and then the contributions already made to the Northumberland Humane Society, leaving a balance of 285,297, and then the balance of that reserve is presented there and how it would be distributed. So overall, since the financial statements were done until the calculations up until October 5th of 2023, there was things by winding up that were a little better off than what were originally thought. So then therefore, there's more money to go back to the participating municipalities. So, and that's what that calculation represents there. So that's what we had calculated in conjunction with the information provided, excellent work provided by your staff. So that is the numbers we have calculated that need to be, or should be distributed back to everyone. So sure if there's any further questions or.
We have questions for Richard? Seeing none, I shall first thank you, Richard, for being with us today and giving us such a positive report on the numbers. And of course, to our own staff for preparing and working through this process on behalf of Hamilton Township. Thank you. Thank you. Arthur, you wish to comment?
If I may, through you, Mayor Jip, just to also thank Richard for your efforts in closing up the information, presenting it today. He's also committed to provide that information to the town, to the municipality of Port Hope and the township of Alnacalden, who are the remaining partners in this agreement, so that their councils are also advised of the final audit of the operations and windup. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Richard.
Thank you. Have a good meeting, everyone.
We do have a motion. And that is that the presentation by Baker Tilly regarding the closing of operations and financial statements for the Joint Animal Control Municipal Board be received. Can I have a mover, please? Larry, seconded John. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. 7.2 on our agenda. Our asset management plan. Presented by Marissa from PSD Citywide. And Marissa, I believe, is on YouTube with us. If you can hear us, and hopefully you can, the floor is yours. Please continue.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor, and to the council for having me today. As was stated, my name is Marisa Benuelas, and I work for PSD Citywide as an asset management advisor. Today, I'm going to be providing an overview of the asset management plan that was prepared for the Township of Hamilton. Just the next slide, please. So in terms of today's agenda, this will be a fairly brief presentation, and so we're going to focus in on 4 key things. The first is, what is the legislative background in terms of the requirements and where does this fit in? We'll touch base on the data effective date, and then we'll get into summary of kind of the key findings and conclude with recommendations. Ontario Regulation 588/17, which is the asset management planning regulation for municipalities in the province, was initiated in 2018 and has a series of different deadlines. So the first was a policy that was due in 2019 and that the township has completed. This was followed by an asset management plan for your core infrastructure, which was due in 2022. And then the next deadline is an asset management plan for all of your infrastructure. So this would extend to non-core assets such as facilities, land improvements, fleets, and so on. This report meets the 2024 requirements of the OREG. And this is in advance of the deadline of 2024. The next requirement thereafter is an asset management plan, which has additional requirements for reporting, such as reporting on the proposed levels of service, and that is due in 2025. The information presented today and in the accompanying report is the same as the information that was presented a few months earlier to Council on the AMPD project. This data is all as of December 2021, so it is reflecting the assets that were in ownership at that time. It is also reflecting the condition of those assets, the replacement cost of those assets as of 2021. It's important to remember when we talk about asset management that data and information will change over time, naturally, as we perhaps add assets to the inventory or remove assets that we own, and as well as the condition of assets change and the replacement cost, as well as other factors. So really, asset management is what we call a living document, or sometimes a liquid document that reflects kind of updates to information over time. So now that we've kind of touched base on the legislation, so what's required, when is it required, where is the township in terms of meeting those requirements, and touch base on the fact that data, is a liquid item, we'll get into some of the key findings. So when we look at all of the infrastructure assets in ownership that meet your tangible capital asset policy, there is a replacement cost of about 207 million. Most of this is related to your core infrastructure. So you'll see kind of your roads and your bridges as some of the larger portions of that total value, but your non-core, such as your facilities, fleet and equipment, for example, are certainly part of that total. When we look at this on a household basis, this equates to about 44,000 per household. And these costs were determined based on a combination of user-defined costing based on a per unit rate. That was the majority of the cases. And then in some cases, inflation of historical costs. This slide here is looking at the state of the infrastructure when we look at the condition. So naturally within any inventory that one owns, there's going to be a bit of variability in the condition of the assets. That's kind of inevitable and quite common. So this graph, this pie chart is showing you kind of for all of the assets that you own, what is the condition of them and the distribution. And so we report both on the percentage that are in fair, for example, or good, and the respective replacement cost. So we can see that just over 90% of your assets are at least in fair or better condition. So that is, good news. Most of your assets as of 2021 were in what we would call fair or better. The information on condition is based on assessed condition where it's available. So assessed condition is more generated from staff or experts who are knowledgeable about the assets. It involves kind of a review of the individual asset. The next slide is looking at the forecasted capital requirements. So this is strictly looking at capital costs. The different colors of the bars reflect different asset categories, and all values are reported in 5-year cumulative bins. So for example, costs between 2021 to 2025, 2026 to 2030, and so on and so forth. So we can see that there are naturally some variations in terms of what the forecasted capital requirements are each year. That is very typical for a portfolio of assets. We can also see that there are some larger spikes in particular 2046 to 2055. Those are largely attributed to some fairly big spikes in your facilities and your bridges. And then if we look at kind of on an average annual basis, what is the forecasted capital requirements? So how much do we anticipate we'll need? That is hitting about 5.8 million. Okay, so this looks at what we call kind of the financial analysis section. So here we're seeking to understand essentially how much money or capital funding do we anticipate we'll need, and then comparing that with what is the historical kind of sustainable capital funding that's available to us. So it's sustainable capital funding cannot consider one-time grants or other non-kind of reoccurring funding sources. So it's typically just looking at OSIF funding, for example, tax funding, rate funding. And so what we can see here is that there is a gap between the forecasted need and the funding that's available. That is very common. I have yet to come across a municipality that I've worked with where there isn't a gap. And so what's important here to remember is just first identifying the problem, and then when we look at kind of future decisions, looking at them from a more sustainable lens and kind of not just reviewing the immediate needs, but what are the longer term needs. Also in the financial strategy, we look at what could be done to close the gap. So the gap again is the difference between the need and the available funding. And so we look at a few different scenarios in terms of the time period over which we could close the gap and the associated impacts to the rate that you'd have to charge for both tax and rate funded assets. And so there's a few different scenarios that are presented, and as a council, it will be your decision, kind of obviously what decisions that you make with regards to funding. But this is kind of what we thought might be a feasible solution. And so here we're looking at increasing for tax funded assets by 1.4% each year for a period of 20 years. And then for your water assets, which are rate funded, increasing it by 2.8%. It is important to note that this is again just based on the inventory that you had as of December 2021. It does not reflect any potential new infrastructure that you could add, and it also does not assume that debt will be taken on to pay for existing infrastructure. Okay, so now that we've gone through kind of, what are some key findings in terms of the inventory, the condition, the value, the replacement cost, what is the situation financially between what we need and what we have? What are some things that we could do to start to kind of close that gap? I'll close the presentation with what we call program recommendations. So these are all intended to kind of advance how you collect information on your assets, analyze, report out, and kind of incorporate asset management into the decisions that you make as a municipality. So the first is to regularly review and update data to ensure you have a complete and accurate data set. That will kind of feed into the projections and forecasts and things like that. The second is to review your internal condition assessment processes across all of your asset categories. So here looking at how you assess condition, who, the frequency, the criteria, things like that. Next is looking at kind of reviewing your capital budgets to ensure that they're appropriate, not just for the immediate term, but also for kind of the mid and long term. Next is to review and evaluate life cycle events. So these are things like maybe a replacement or a rehabilitation and their associated schedules and costs. And then the final is to regularly measure and review your current levels of service. Current levels of service are essentially kind of your asset performance indicators. And then as well, in anticipation for the 2025 deadline, to begin identifying resources to support both current level of service reporting as well as the forthcoming proposed level of service reporting. So that concludes my presentation for today. I hope it has been helpful and informative. And before I kind of close off, I do also want to extend my thanks and gratitude to the township for allowing us to work with you on this project and being so great to work with as well.
Thank you, Marissa. Do we have any questions at this time? John, I see you looking this way.
Just one, Mayor Jib. This is based on the 2021 figures?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Mark, please.
Just a quick question. Do you have your financial strategy where you put in your 1.4% annual tax rate change? Was there any consideration there taken for growth within the municipality?
So this is, at this time, no. So this asset management plan is just looking at the current inventory. And so that's why one of the assumptions that was noted is that it's just based on the existing infrastructure that you have. So should there be additional, infrastructure acquired, you may need additional investment beyond that amount.
set aside growth for our own infrastructure, but I was talking more to the growth of like additional housing and income that way. Is that been considered?
Oh, I see, for revenues.
Yes.
So we looked at your current and your past 2 years of budgets and revenues to ascertain what was the current rate of investment.
Any follow-up, Mark?
No, maybe Nesbitt, maybe you could answer that a little bit for me. I'm still a little lost to what she meant by, I presume she's looked at it for a period of 2 years. As our growth goes up and down, I don't expect we're gonna skyrocket it any year, but we are pretty consistent getting growth every year.
That's right, through you, Mr. Mayor. In terms of the calculation that she did, what we are contributing right now is what's in our budget right now, right? So if there is growth, but we don't increase the contribution, that has been reflected in the presentation. This is assuming that whatever we are contributing, if we continue to contribute it, we are in a gap of $3 million. However, if we increase it by 1.4%, on a yearly basis, that could include growth too. We are going to be in a better shape within 20 years.
Okay, thank you for that.
Any further questions? Marissa, thank you. I know you've been working closely with our staff, and we appreciate both their efforts and yours. So thank you again.
Thank
We
you,
do have
Mr. Mayor.
We do have a prepared motion that the presentation of the township's asset management plan by PSD Citywide be received, and that council approves the asset management plan as presented and endorsed by the treasurer. Moved by Bruce. Seconder, John. Any follow-up questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion? Carried. Thank you. Oh, we have no business under item 8 or 9 on our agenda. So we'll bounce to 10, council meeting minutes. And it's the council September 19th, 2023. And the motion reads that the minutes of September 19th, 2023 regular council meeting be adopted. Could I have a mover, please? Moved by Larry, seconded by Bruce. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Carried, thank you. 10.2, Committee of the Whole, October the 10th, 23. That the minutes of the October 10th, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting be approved. I have a mover, please. Moved by Larry, seconded by Mark. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Carried, thank you. Moving on to item 11, there's no business. Item 12, committee reports. And we have a prepared motion to receive agenda items 12.2 to 12.8 of the October 17th, 2023 regular council meeting agenda be received for information. Moved by Mark, seconded by Bruce. Any questions or comments? Please, Mark.
And I've been asked this from a resident dealing with the police service board. Maybe one of the two members could answer where we are with our county-wide board. Is that been moving along, or is it kind of just slowed up again?
Sorry, through Mayor Jeb, just to answer your question, Mark, it is moving along. We're having another meeting probably the 31st of October. The province has now set a date for April of 2024 for the regulations to come down and be enforced. Yes. So we are kind of the lead board. We're going to probably set the example for every other board to follow. So we're trying to do things appropriately, and then we're taking baby steps at the very beginning, and then we'll start to take larger steps as it comes closer. So till that time, we're just moving along. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Any follow-up? Any questions on items 12.2 to 12.8? Okay, I believe we have the motion. Do all those in favor of the motion, please? Carried. Thank you. Item 13 on our agenda, Public Works and Infrastructure. Motion to put this on the floor that council receives report PWI 2023-10 Public Works Equipment Update. Can I have a mover, please? Moved by Bruce, second by Larry. Any questions or comments on this? Yes, John.
Yes, Mayor Jib, I'd like to have this deferred till the next regular council meeting. The manager of Public Works is unavailable right now for questions or comments. So I'd like to have this report moved to there because it does not include general locations to be provided.
If I could turn to our clerk's department, we have a proposal for deferral, which will need a mover and a seconder, but we can leave the previous motion on the floor as it sits. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, it's appropriate. We'll just, the disposition of the former motion will just remain.
John, you're making that a motion to defer,
Yes, that's correct.
and do we have a seconder for that motion? Seconded by Mark. Any further follow-up at this time? Okay, all those in pardon me, all those in favor of the deferral motion? Carried, thank you. Item 13.2, the standby generator report. And we do have a prepared motion to get this on the floor. Council receives report PWI 2023-09, Hamilton Township standby generators update for information. Do I have a mover, please, and a seconder? Moved by John, seconded by Larry. Any questions or comments? I do have one. I have been very outspoken on our generators, as everyone in this room is more than aware of. And I would request your consideration of a deferral on this. I would like to provide what will be a positive comment back to our staff. And I would like them present when that occurs. So could I ask for a mover to have this deferred and a seconder? John? All those in favor of the deferral motion? Carried. Thank you. Item 14 on our agenda is racks and facilities, so there is no report today. Item 15, corporate services. 15.1, user fee update, parks and facilities programming. And we do have a prepared motion. It is recommended the council of the corporation of the Township of Hamilton enacts as follows. The council receives report T 2023-21, being 2023 user fee updates, parks and facilities programming for information, and that council approves the proposed user fees set out in report T 2023-21, being the 2023 user fee update, parks and facilities programming, and that the township fees and charges bylaw be amended to reflect the parks and rec fees effective October 17th, 2023. Could I have a mover, please? Moved by Bruce. Seconded by John. Any follow-up questions or comments? Please, Mark.
Just a quick question, because I don't know what it is. What's drop-in programs and what is $5? Is that an hour or is that a?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so the drop-in programs are after-school programs that we're going to be offering, where we'll have some just after school where they drop in for an hour. So you don't have to register or anything like that. You would just come in, pay your $5 and register. Yeah, they're usually about an hour long is what we're looking at. So I will say to the report that we are as we're going through the road of creating these programs, there's still a lot of things we'll probably be coming back with some more fees as we create them with more of the cultural and the arts type programs that have just come up as recent as this morning that we're pursuing. So this will be it's new to us, so these fees are kind of coming up fast and furious.
Any further questions? Okay, we do have a mover and a seconder. All those in favor of the motion? Okay, thank you. 15.2 on our agenda, Building Department Policy Amendment. Prepared motion, the council receives report, Building 2023-03, Policy Amendment for Plumbing Permits for a non-residential accessory building for information, and that council delegates approval authority for section 4 of the Building Department policy to the manager of development services. Do I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Bruce, seconded by Mark. Any questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion? Carried. Thank you. Item 15.3. Motion reads that council receives report T 23-23. I'll start over. The council receives report T 2023-22, 2024 user fee update, building, bylaw, and planning for information. And the council approves the proposed user fees set out in report 2023-22, 24 user fees update, building, bylaw, and planning, and that the township fees and charges bylaw be approved to include all approved 2024 user fees. Can I have a mover, please? Moved by John, seconded by Bruce. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Carried. A lot of numbers in that one. 15.4. Planning 2023-19 Housing Affordability Task Force. The motion reads that council receives report Planning 2023-19 for information, and that Mayor Gibb be authorized to respond on behalf of the municipality to the request for comments by MMAH outlining the 5 recommendations as outlined by staff. Can I have a mover, please? Larry, second by John. Questions or comments? John.
Through Mayor Gibb. The recommendations that were brought forward by our staff, and I think they're quite good. It's just in line with other municipalities our size. The recommendations that were put back to the government.
Jennifer, for the microphone purpose, could you step and please answer that if you're available to do so?
Through you, Mayor Gibb. Is that okay with the static? I have not done a review of similar municipalities, what their recommendations are. This came to us with a fairly short turnaround. There hasn't been a lot of discussion about it. So I haven't had an opportunity to review with other municipalities. I tried to select some that would have an impact on the municipality or not have a negative impact on the municipality.
Yes, thank you. I noticed that, and there was also other recommendations that do affect larger centers than they would the smaller ones like ours, but you've done a good job. Thank you very much.
Any further questions? Larry.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it always concerns me that the Ministry of Housing always pushes these items forward with very little time to respond to them. It seems to me that it's just an ongoing process that we've been hearing, and I'm really upset about that. So I just want to voice my dissatisfaction with the ministry again for not giving us the opportunity to respond in appropriate time frames. Thank you.
If I could provide 2 comments. First of all, thank you to staff for your quick turnaround on this. And to my fellow council member, I I believe there's going to be an opportunity for you to share that with local MPP, which you're not aware of yet. But I'm extending the invitation to you. I hope you have notes on that. I'll get back to you with more information soon. Okay, we do have a motion on the floor. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion? Carried. Thank you. Moving on to item 18.1 under bylaws. And that is bylaw 2023-60, fees and charges amend 2022-47 parks and facility schedule. Prepared motion is that bylaw 2023-60 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 2022-47 fees and charges bylaw be given first, second, and third reading and finally passed the 17th day of October 2023. Could I have a mover, please? Moved by Larry, second by Mark. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. 18.2. Bylaw 2023-61, 2024 fees and charges. The bylaw reads that bylaw 2023-61 being a bylaw to establish fees and charges for the year 2024 be given a first, second, and third reading and finally passed the 17th day of October 2023. Could I have a mover, please? Moved by Bruce, seconded by Larry. Questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion? Carried. Thank you. We have no one with us from media, nor no one online, I presume. So we are about to move into closed session, and we will be taking a short recess for that transition and maybe grab a coffee or something like that. So motion to move to a closed session to discuss matters permitted under the Municipal Act, Section 239 2B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including a municipal or local board employees, regarding community recognitions, awards nominations, private property matters, and permit issues. It is recommended the Council of Corporation of Township of Hamilton enact as follows: that the regular council meeting held on October 17th, 2023, go into closed session at 1:43 p.m. under Municipal Act, Section 239B, regarding community recognitions, awards, nominations, private property matters, and permit issues. Could I have a mover, please? Moved by Larry, seconded by Bruce. All those in favor of the motion? Carried, and we'll take a short recess for transition.